Thank you so much, Tohwo, for joining us.
You're welcome and good evening.
Now, is the declaration and ratification of the state of emergency constitutional?
Well, I don't definitely analysts and lawyers, they've made their point on that is unconstitutional, and from all indications, I've patiently and carefully read the statement of the president and also look at the section he relied on, and I believe is worrisome for the president or the draft of the people who draft his statement to have relied on that particular provision of the law, because from all indications, intent and purpose, if you look at that section 305 subsection 3 paragraph G, put a specific demand on why the president should take such an action, and such step the president ought to take cognizance of section 305 subsection 4. And I do tell people, if you look at what transpired in Rivers State, I think it has not gotten to the point when the president will waive out subsection 4 and just jump into subsection 5 of the subsection 5 of that section 305 of the Constitution. It's worrisome, but why it's not a surprise to some of us is that this was taken in a higher scale. It has been on and on in Nigeria, and people who believe in the spirit of the law or the Constitution just ignored it. In states, it has been happening. Even in the said River State, it happened. Currently in Osun State, it happened, and you can see that in Edo State, it's still there. But just what we are deliberating on, what makes it a news now, it has gotten to the governor, where the National Assembly is now acting like the State House of Assembly in the turn of a governor suspending or removing a local government chairman from office.
But then, so the state of emergency was approved by the National Assembly via a voice vote. Doesn't that count?
Well, that is another concern. But just like if you look at the analysis I said earlier, you could see that this is happening in a larger scale. Nigeria can be defined, or if you look at it, law is dynamic, and you will see from the perspective I want to look at, I'll look at it from the sociological school of thought when it comes to law. Law as an institution does not exist in a vacuum. It also goes in line with the dynamic of the society. So if you see what happened in the State House of Assembly, there are several things you need to ask yourself. Where is party ideology? Where is party affiliation? Because if you look at it, we have the APC, the current party of the president, does not have the majority, simple majority in the State House in the National Assembly. But you could see that there was never a dissenting voice. There's never a dissenting voice either from the senators from the PDP, neither the Labour Party who proclaim to be a new face in Nigerian politics, or will you say that is he at the House of Reps? Then there are so many things that need to be questioned, and I believe that situations like that ought to go by a head count or a secret ballot, so that every members of the House of Reps or Senate can be counted holistically to express their view in one way or the other. But you could see one of the House, I think the House of Reps, it was so dramatic and is a bit entertaining that someone even had to go into the mic, put his mic on to overshadow or to make it so loud that it overshadow any other dissenting voice. I think what we should be thinking of is what should be a proper way or school of thought. Is it an unwritten constitution that we should practice, or a written constitution which we appear to be practicing?
So a school of thought, should I say another school of thought, believes that the president saved Governor Siminalayi Fubara from impeachment through the declaration. Do you also think that is?
No, that school of thought is, should I won't say it's myopic, I won't say it's childish politically, because now we've already laid a foundation, but we don't really know the extent of that the extent of the foundation we've laid, because so many constitutional bridges is already on the ground. Now, let's assume that the matter is settled and Fubara returns to Fubara returns as the governor of Rivers State, or the state house of reps, the state house of assembly, they all return. Now the question will not be, based on the spirit of the constitution that define the tenure of a governor, the tenure of elected member of a state house of assembly, then where would it be defined to be that they've exhausted their tenure? So you see that there is every tendency, except the court may look otherwise, because we as lawyers, ours is to express our view and opinion while the courts decide what the law says. You see that technically Rivers State will majorly, if we look at the case, if we look at several cases, you look at the case of Peter Obi in Anambra State, you see that Rivers State may drastically or technically dive into off-cycle elections system. So saving the Fubara from impeachment, I think it really exposed so many things in the sense that just like the other opponent, which I don't want to really align myself to, because to me, and as a public affairs analyst, I think Wike is even more vulnerable than any other thing, because he has exposed his weakness towards his grip of his structure, to have brought in the federal mind, or to have gone by this method of settling his issues. So I don't think it's ought to be, but I think if they were wise enough, is to follow the letter of the Constitution and see Fubara impeached if they can do that, and let the system flow. Because what we are in now is really a constitutional crisis and a bad precedent for any democratic country to look up to.
All right. Let's look at it from this angle, Tohwo. Well, it's been argued that constitutionally, what the president should have done was to hand power over to the deputy governor instead of a sole administrator. Should that have been the case?
No, it wouldn't have been the case. If you look at it constitutionally, the Constitution states the provision, the Constitution states how a governor or the tenure of a governor, how a governor can be removed. And I will state it from, if you look at from section 180 of the Constitution talks about the tenure, after the elapse of the tenure of the governor. If you look at section 181, talks about the death of the governor. If you look at section 182 of the Constitution, talks about disqualification. Then if you look at section 188 of the Constitution, talks about the removal, which is the impeachment proceedings. Then if you look at section 189, talks about permanent incapacity. So these are options opened, and I think the best option they would have worked up, they would have constitutionally and politically to work up to, is that section 188, where is the impeachment. So the president has no right, I agree, I state it clearly, the president has no right to remove a democratically elected governor of a state, just as some of us were crying and also shouting. But just like all the pressure group, like the Niger Bar Association, they've done the press conference and it ends there, because I believe by now that the Nigeria Bar Association as association would have taken this matter to court as a public interest group to protect the integrity of the Constitution. So I think it cannot. The state of, look at what happened in Plateau State in 2004. You could see what the Supreme Court said when Obasanjo tried to implement what happened in 1962 in Western Region, and the Supreme Court lashed the process adopted and reinstated Darie. Do you understand? And I think during our school time, our constitutional lecturer will say, okay, we excuse Obasanjo from his military background. Do you understand? We excuse Obasanjo from his military background. But if you look at Tinubu, who is alleged to be one of the pioneers, the Wandekos, do you understand? The pioneers of fighters for democracy. Okay. I think this is too much to be attached to his personality.
Well, the NBA has come out to say that it has limited powers in cases like this, and the Ijaw Youth Nation has actually dragged the president to the ECOWAS court. So we wait and see if there will be any sort of justice for those who feel aggrieved about this declaration. Tohwo Oseruvwoja, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.